She was already knocking before I was fully awake. Not the polite kind of knocking, the kind that means something has gone wrong and the person doing it has run out of other options. 3 sharp hits, then a pause, then 3 more, and I was up before the second set landed, which tells you something about how lightly I had been sleeping, and nothing good about why. I opened the door and she was standing in the hallway in a gray t-shirt and bare feet, her hair loose, one hand still raised from knocking, and the look on her face was the look of someone who had just frightened themselves badly and had not yet come down from it. She said my name. Then she walked into my chest and wrapped both arms around me and held on. I stood there with my hands at my sides for exactly 1 second. Then I put my arms around her and held on back. And the hallway was very quiet, and the building made the sounds buildings make at 2 in the morning, and I understood, for the first time in the 8 months I had lived next door to Margot Voss, that I had been waiting for her to do exactly this. I did not know what to do with that understanding, so I held on. My name is Cal Mercer. I am 36 years old. I do structural engineering for a firm that works mostly on residential builds, the bones of houses, the parts nobody sees, which suits me fine because I am better at solving problems than explaining them. I moved to this building after my last lease ended, and the apartment I had been in felt too much like a place I had shared rather than a place I lived. I took the flat on the 4th floor because it was quiet, and because the building manager, a straight-talking woman named Bev, told me the neighbor in 4B was no trouble at all, which turned out to be the most precise and least helpful description of a person I have ever received. The neighbor in 4B was Margot Voss. She was 33. She had been a secondary school art teacher, and she still occasionally took on private students on Saturday mornings, which I knew because sometimes I could hear faint music through the wall. Not her music. The students' music, the tentative kind, played on small portable speakers so they could reference what they were trying to draw. She had dark hair cut to her jaw and glasses she pushed up when she was concentrating, and a habit of carrying things in the crook of her arm rather than in bags, books, folders, grocery items, as if she had somewhere to be and bags would slow her down. Her husband had died 14 months before I moved in. I learned this not from her, but from Bev, who told me because she thought I should know, and who used the words quietly and carefully in a way that told me she had said them many times, and they had not gotten easier. His name had been Tom. He had been 35. He had been, from what Bev said without saying too much, the kind of person who left a very specific shape of absence behind him. Her prop was a blue mug. Not a special one, just a wide, flat-bottomed blue mug that she carried into the hallway on weekend mornings when she collected her post. Always with 2 hands, even when it was nearly empty, the way you carry something you have carried so many times, it has become reflex. I had seen it 50 times. It was the most ordinary thing about her, and also, somehow the most her. We had become neighbors the way neighbors become neighbors when neither of them is looking for it, gradually, then all at once. It started with held doors and nods in the lift. Then it moved to occasional conversations at the post boxes that lasted longer than either of us planned. Then, one evening in February, when the heating in the building had gone out and the temperature had dropped with real intent, she knocked on my door and asked if I had any idea how to bleed a radiator, and I did. And I came over with a radiator key and bled hers, and she made tea in the blue mug and a regular mug for me, and we sat in her kitchen for an hour, talking about nothing in particular. About the building, about the street, about a book she had been reading, and whether the ending was earned. I went back to my flat and thought, well, that was a good hour. We did not address what the hour was. That seemed right. She was a woman still carrying the shape of something enormous, and I was a man who had learned, slowly and at some cost, not to push at things that were not yet ready to be pushed. So we stayed neighbors. Good neighbors. The kind who remembered things about each other, her coffee order, my work schedule, which evenings she had students, without ever quite naming the reason we were paying attention. I noticed her more than I should have for a man who was only being neighborly. I noticed when she was tired before she said so. I noticed the way her laugh changed, depending on whether something was genuinely funny or whether she was being polite about it. I noticed, specifically, that she never talked about Tom unprompted, but that when he came up, occasionally in passing, in the way you can't entirely avoid the person who took up the most space in your life, she would go briefly quiet, and then come back. And the coming back always seemed like a deliberate decision rather than a natural one. I told myself I was just paying attention. That is hiding with better branding. But I was committed to the disguise, so I kept wearing it, and we stayed neighbors, and it was fine. It was completely fine until 2 a.m. on a Thursday in October, when she knocked on my door like something had gone wrong. I pulled her inside. The word is pulled, but it was not forceful, just gentle. A hand at her back, moving us both into the warmth of the flat and out of the cold hallway. She was still holding on, her face against my shoulder, and I could feel her heart going fast. "Hey," I said. "Hey." What happened? There was a noise, she said, muffled slightly against me. In the wall, I don't know. A bang, and then a scraping sound, and I woke up and I didn't know what it was, and I just, "Okay," I said. "Okay. Are you hurt?" No, I just panicked. She pulled back slightly, not all the way, and looked up at me with an expression that was equal parts embarrassed and shaken. "I'm sorry. It's 2 a.m. I'm sorry, I didn't want to be alone in there until I knew what it was." "Don't apologize," I said. She looked at me for a moment. Something moved across her face that I did not know how to read. "Don't apologize," I said again. And I meant it. I went and checked her flat. The noise had been the pipe in the shared wall. The old building had a hot water system that occasionally decided to announce itself, and October was when it started waking up after summer. Nothing structural, nothing wrong. Just the building reminding everyone that it was alive. I tapped the pipe, ran the hot tap, watched the airlock work itself out. 5 minutes. When I came back to my flat, she was sitting on my sofa with her knees pulled up and her hands around a mug I did not remember making. She had made it herself, apparently, in the brief window I had been gone, which meant she had found my kitchen and my tea and worked out the kettle without being told. And something about that simple fact, the way she had just moved through my space without asking, like she already knew it, did something quiet to my chest. "Pipe," I said. "Old building. It does it every year when the weather turns." She let out a long breath. "Of course it does." "You're fine. Nothing to worry about." "I feel like an idiot," she said. "You heard a loud noise at 2 a.m. and you didn't know what it was," I said. "That's a reasonable thing to find alarming." She was quiet for a moment, looking at the mug. Then she said, very evenly, "The last time something woke me up at night, it wasn't a pipe." I sat down. Not on the far end, closer, not touching, but close enough that she would feel it. "I know," I said. She nodded once, slowly, and I understood that she was not going to say more than that, and I was not going to ask. I had learned, over 8 months, that there was a particular kind of silence she carried that was not an invitation and not a wall. It was just the space where something had been, and it needed to stay open rather than filled. So I let it stay open. I sat with her, and the flat was warm, and she held the mug with 2 hands the way she always held the mug, and outside the building made its ordinary noises, and neither of us said anything for a while, and neither of us moved. "You don't have to stay," I said, when I thought she had steadied. "But you can, if you don't want to go back yet." She looked at me then, the kind of look that means something is being weighed. "You have work tomorrow." "I have work most days," I said. "I'll manage." She looked at her mug. "Tom used to say that," she said. "When I couldn't sleep, he'd say, 'Come on, I'll manage,' like it was the easiest thing in the world to give up sleep for someone." She smiled, just slightly, and it was the bittersweet kind, the kind that has grief in it, but not only grief. He always sounded like he meant it. "I mean it," I said. She looked at me for a long moment. Her fingers tightened around the mug. "I know you do," she said, and it was so quiet and so certain that I felt it land somewhere I had not expected. She fell asleep on my sofa about an hour later. I put a blanket over her and went to bed and lay awake for a while looking at the ceiling and thinking about the fact that she had said "I know you do" with the tone of someone who had already decided something and was simply waiting for the right moment to say it out loud. I did not sleep particularly well. I was fine with that. In the morning she was gone, an early student. She texted, "Sorry, thank you, you're a good neighbor." And I made coffee and stood in my kitchen and thought about the word neighbor, and how it was a perfectly accurate word, and also, at this point, not nearly the right one. The month that followed was the month I understood what had been quietly building for 8 months. It was small things. She brought back 2 portions of something from a restaurant she had tried with a friend because she thought I might want to know if it was good. It was good. I brought her a spare radiator key with a note that said "for next October." She kept it in the kitchen drawer, I noticed, next to the good scissors, the drawer where you keep things you might actually need. She started knocking on Friday evenings with a question that was not really a question. Had I eaten? Did I want to? There's a film on if you're not doing anything, and I started opening the door before she'd finished knocking, which she clocked immediately and said nothing about, with the kind of precision that meant she had clocked it. I was very bad at this. I had always been better with the bones of things than with the surfaces, and I was trying to read a surface I had never been taught to read, and I spent a significant amount of time second-guessing what was generosity and what was something else, and whether I was mistaking the difference because I wanted to. Then one evening in November she came over with her blue mug, from her own kitchen, already made, and sat on my sofa and said, without any preamble at all, "I went to see Tom's mum last weekend." I turned from the kitchen. "How was that?" "Hard," she said. "Good." "Both." She looked at the mug. She said something. A pause. She said that Tom always worried I wouldn't let anyone back in, that I'd decide once was enough and stop trying. She looked up at me then. She said he would have hated that. That he would have. She stopped. Steadied herself. He would have wanted me to stop treating being okay as a betrayal. I came and sat down. Same place as October. Close enough. "She's right," Margot said quietly. "She's probably right. I know she's right. I've known for a while." She looked at the mug again. "It's just one thing to know something and another thing to actually," she exhaled, "actually do anything about it." "You don't have to do anything," I said. "Not tonight. Not because of anything." She looked at me sidelong. "You keep giving me outs." "I keep meaning them," I said. "I know." She turned to face me more fully then, pulling one leg up onto the sofa. The mug balanced on her knee. The glasses were pushed up. She had been concentrating. "That's actually the thing," she said. That is specifically the thing that I have been trying not to think about for 4 months. A-beat. You always mean it. Every single time, and I'm so tired of pretending I haven't noticed. Something shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. I've noticed you noticing, I said. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. How long? Long enough. And you just waited. I wasn't going to push at something that wasn't ready, I said. That seemed obvious. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what if it's ready now? I looked at her. She was looking back at me with the particular steadiness of someone who has thought about what they are about to say for a long time and has decided that the thinking part is finished. Not reckless, not impulsive. Decided. Then tell me that, I said. She set the mug down on the table. Very deliberately. Both hands. And then released. 8 months ago, I stopped dreading running into you in the hallway, she said. And then I started looking forward to it. And then I started being disappointed when I didn't, and making reasons to knock on your door, and telling myself I was just being neighborly, and knowing the whole time that I wasn't. She looked at her hands. I haven't wanted to be near someone in a long time. I forgot what it felt like to want to. And then I remembered, and it turned out the person was you, and I've been trying to decide what to do about that ever since. I reached out and put my hand over hers. Very gently. The same question as always. She turned her hand over and held on. The pipe was actually useful, I said. She laughed. The real one. Unguarded. The one I had been collecting, and leaned her head against my shoulder. Don't, she said. Don't make me feel better about panicking. I'm not, I said. I'm saying I would have waited another 4 months if you hadn't knocked on my door. A pause. Then, quietly. I know. That's why I came. There is a version of this story where I say something very good at that moment. I did not say anything very good. I put my arm around her, and she stayed where she was, and we watched the film she had mentioned. And at some point she fell asleep on my shoulder. And I did not move, and the flat was warm, and I thought about the bones of things, about what holds and what doesn't, and the difference between the two. And I thought that this felt like something that would hold. In the spring, a new couple moved into the flat across the hall. They knocked on my door first, and then Margot's, introducing themselves, and Margot happened to be in my kitchen at the time, which meant she answered my door alongside me, and the new couple looked at us with the easy assumption of people encountering a pair who have clearly been a pair for a long time. We did not correct them. We looked at each other, and she had the ghost of a smile, and I had the sense to not say anything that would ruin it. A year after that, Bev stopped me in the lobby and said, with the tone of someone who had been right about something and was allowing herself one moment to acknowledge it, I always thought you'd be good for each other. She did not wait for a response. She went back to her office. She had been right, as it turned out. She had been right in October, and she had probably been right from the beginning. Bev generally was. Margot still carries the blue mug. She carries it into my kitchen now as often as her own, which has made the mornings substantially better and has done something irreversible to my understanding of what ordinary can feel like when it belongs to 2 people instead of 1. She doesn't panic at the building's noises anymore. She knows which ones mean nothing and which ones mean something, and which one, specifically, meant she should knock on my door. She says it was just a pipe. She's right. It was just a pipe. It was the most useful pipe in the building.